There is a particular kind of laughter that wounds the soul more deeply than open hatred ever could. It is the laughter that greets your dream, the smile that says, "Be realistic," the voice that whispers, "Who do you think you are?" Many of the greatest visions in history were first treated as delusions. The world often laughs at what it does not yet understand. And if you have ever carried a dream that felt larger than your current circumstances, then you have likely tasted that laughter. But here is the strange and beautiful truth. Time has a way of revealing what mockery cannot see. Time is the silent judge, and more often than not, it sides with the dreamer. Tonight, I want to speak to the part of you that was doubted, misunderstood, perhaps even ridiculed. Because hidden within that experience are 5 powerful truths that determine whether you will break under the laughter or be built by it. There is a peculiar sting in being laughed at, especially when the laughter is aimed not at your failure, but at your possibility. It is one thing to be criticized for what you have done. It is another to be mocked for what you believe you might become. In that moment, the sound of laughter seems to carry a verdict: you are unrealistic. You are naive. You are overreaching. Yet what appears to be judgment is often something far more revealing. When people laugh at your dream, they are seldom measuring your true potential. More often, they are encountering the edges of their own courage. The human psyche is not only a place of light, but also of shadow. Within each person lives a collection of unrealized desires, abandoned ambitions, and silenced longings. Many have made quiet compromises with life. They have adjusted their expectations to match what feels safe, acceptable, and predictable. When they see someone daring to reach beyond those invisible boundaries, something within them stirs, and not always comfortably. Psychology has long described a mechanism known as projection. We attribute to others what we struggle to face within ourselves. The person who once dreamed of writing a book but never tried may laugh at the aspiring author. The individual who wished to build a business but surrendered to security may mock the entrepreneur. The laughter becomes a defense, a way to protect the ego from confronting its own retreat. Your courage becomes a mirror, and mirrors are unsettling. They reveal what is possible and what was avoided. This is why the laughter can feel so intense. It is not merely amusement, it is resistance. Your willingness to risk exposes the cost of their safety. Your belief unsettles their resignation. It is easier to label you unrealistic than to question why they stopped believing. Consider the story of Walt Disney. Before his name became synonymous with imagination, he was dismissed as someone who lacked it. He was fired from a newspaper for not being creative enough. When he spoke of building a vast theme park where families could escape into wonder, many financiers treated the idea as childish fantasy. They could not see what he saw. Their vision was constrained by what already existed. His vision was guided by what might be. The laughter directed at him was not a precise assessment of his ability. It was a confession of their limitation. They evaluated the future using the measurements of the present. He imagined something that had no precedent, and therefore no proof. To those bound by precedent, imagination appears irrational. This pattern repeats throughout history. Every genuine innovation begins as an intrusion into accepted reality, and the psyche resists intrusion. We are creatures of habit, anchored in familiar narratives about what is possible. When someone disrupts that narrative, the immediate response is often ridicule. But you must understand something essential: the laughter does not define the dream. It reveals the boundaries of the dreamer's audience. When someone mocks your ambition, listen carefully. Beneath the surface you may hear unspoken fears. What if I tried and failed? What if I hoped and was disappointed? What if I discovered I was not capable? These questions haunt the human heart. Many prefer to avoid them entirely. It feels safer to dismiss ambition than to confront one's own avoidance of it. Your dream, therefore, becomes a psychological disturbance. It challenges the quiet agreements others have made with mediocrity. And so they laugh, not because you are foolish, but because your courage threatens their comfort. This is not a call to arrogance. It is a call to awareness. If you internalize their laughter, you begin to shrink your vision to match their fear. You trade possibility for approval. And in doing so, you betray something sacred within yourself. Instead, consider the laughter as evidence that you are touching something powerful. Growth always disturbs equilibrium. When you step beyond the ordinary, you will inevitably provoke reaction. But reaction is not revelation. It does not reveal your limits, it reveals theirs. The crucial question is whether you will allow their fear to become your own. To hold a dream in the face of mockery requires a certain inner solitude. You must learn to anchor your identity not in applause, but in conviction. You must trust what you have glimpsed internally, even when it lacks external validation. This is a difficult path because human beings are social creatures. We long to belong. Laughter threatens that belonging. Yet sometimes, the path to authentic belonging begins with standing alone. If someone laughs at your dream, pause before you interpret it as a verdict. Ask yourself instead, what does this reaction reveal? Often, it reveals that you have dared to imagine beyond the collective comfort of the room. It reveals that you have refused to confine yourself to inherited limitations. And perhaps most importantly, it reveals that your dream carries enough power to disturb the settled dust of ordinary expectation. Do not mistake that disturbance for failure. It may be the first sign that you are exactly where you need to be. There is a quiet force within every community that seeks stability above all else. It does not announce itself as fear. It presents itself as reason, caution, practicality. It whispers that what has worked so far should continue to work, that what is familiar is therefore trustworthy. Human beings are deeply attached to the known. Behavioral psychology repeatedly confirms what we sense intuitively. We prefer predictable discomfort over uncertain possibility. Even when change promises improvement, the mind hesitates. The unfamiliar feels like danger, and the psyche instinctively tightens its grip on what it recognizes. This is why every genuine dream enters the world as a disturbance. When you dare to imagine something beyond the current arrangement of reality, you are not merely setting a personal goal. You are challenging a shared agreement about what is possible. You are quietly declaring, there is more. And those three words, simple as they seem, unsettle the foundations of collective comfort. The status quo is not just a social arrangement, it is a psychological shelter. It protects individuals from confronting uncertainty. When someone steps outside of it, others feel the draft. Your dream becomes evidence that the walls may not be as fixed as they believed. And if the walls are not fixed, then neither are there excuses. Consider how history treats those who expand the boundaries of imagination. When the Wright brothers announced their intention to build a flying machine, they were not simply proposing a technical invention. They were challenging centuries of assumption. Human beings were creatures of the earth. The sky belonged to birds and to myth. Distinguished scientists dismissed the idea as fantasy. The New York Times confidently predicted that flight would take millions of years to achieve, and yet within weeks, the first powered flight lifted from the sands of Kitty Hawk. The resistance they faced was not rooted solely in technical skepticism. It was rooted in psychological defense. Their dream threatened an established understanding of reality. To accept that flight was possible required a shift in worldview. And worldviews do not change easily. They resist, they mock, they deny, until reality forces them to adapt. Your own dream may not involve machines or headlines, but it carries the same disruptive energy. Perhaps you wish to leave a secure career to pursue meaningful work. Perhaps you envision building something that does not yet exist in your community. Perhaps you want to become a person no one around you has dared to become. Whatever its form, your dream presses against the invisible ceiling of collective expectation, and when that ceiling is pressed, it creaks. People may respond with skepticism, not because they wish you harm, but because your movement creates psychological tension. If you succeed, the narrative must change. If you rise beyond familiar limits, Others must confront the possibility that they could have done the same. It is more comfortable to doubt you than to re-examine themselves. Understand this clearly. Meaningful dreams are not designed to fit neatly into existing frameworks. If your vision blends perfectly with the expectations of everyone around you, it may not be a vision at all, only an extension of what is already accepted. The discomfort you encounter is often a sign that you are touching something archetypal within the human story, the impulse to transcend. Every era has its guardians of normalcy and its pioneers of possibility. The pioneers are rarely welcomed at first. They stand at the edge of the known world, speaking of continents no one has seen. To those standing safely inland, such claims sound like madness. Yet it is always the edge that expands the map. If your dream is met with raised eyebrows and cautious advice, do not immediately interpret this as failure. It may be evidence that your vision stretches beyond the current framework, and stretching beyond frameworks is precisely what breathes life into stagnant systems. But this path requires inner strength. To challenge collective comfort, even unintentionally, invites isolation. You may feel misunderstood. You may question yourself in the silence after others have expressed their doubts. This is the psychological trial of the dreamer, to remain anchored in an inner conviction while external consensus wavers. The temptation will be to shrink your dream until it feels acceptable, to soften its edges so it no longer disturbs. Yet in doing so, you risk diminishing the very force that called you forward. Remember that every established truth was once an unsettling idea. Every norm began as a deviation. The resistance you face is not a sign that you are wrong. It may be a sign that you are early. The collective psyche moves slowly. It prefers gradual adjustment. But individuals can move with greater courage. When you honor a dream that stretches beyond what is currently validated, you participate in the ancient pattern of transformation. You become part of the quiet revolution reshapes what others eventually call normal. And though the crowd may hesitate, history has shown that it is always the one who dares to say, "There is more," who ultimately expands the horizon for everyone. There comes a moment in every life when the noise of the world grows louder than the voice within. It is the moment when others question your direction, when their laughter or doubt presses against your confidence, and you are forced to confront a question that cannot be avoided. Do you believe in your vision more than you believe in their opinion? This is not merely a motivational dilemma. It is a psychological confrontation. For much of our lives, we are shaped by mirrors. We learn who we are by observing how others respond to us. Approval becomes a kind of nourishment. Praise reassures us that we belong. Criticism, especially when repeated, begins to erode the fragile structure of identity. But a true dream disrupts this dependence. When you commit to something that others do not yet understand, external validation often disappears. The applause grows quiet. Encouragement turns into caution. And suddenly, you stand alone with your conviction. It is here, in this solitude, that transformation begins. When the outer world withdraws its approval, you are pushed inward. You are asked to examine the foundation of your belief. Is your dream merely a wish sustained by praise? Or is it an authentic expression of who you are becoming? Without the reinforcement of others, you must discover whether your vision is rooted in ego or in something deeper. Psychological research confirms what experience teaches us. Long-term achievement is not determined primarily by talent. It is shaped by perseverance, by what modern psychologists call grit. Angela Duckworth's studies demonstrate that sustained passion and consistent effort over time predict success more reliably than intelligence or natural ability. This insight aligns with a deeper truth about the psyche. As identity is formed not by flashes of brilliance, but by enduring commitment. Talent may attract attention. Perseverance builds character. When Oprah Winfrey was dismissed from her early television role and told she was unfit for the medium, she faced an inner crisis. The external mirror reflected rejection. She could have accepted that reflection as truth. She could have allowed the judgment to redefine her identity. Instead, She chose to remain loyal to an inner sense of calling. She trusted a voice within that contradicted the voices around her. That decision was not simply professional, it was existential. She chose to define herself from the inside out, rather than from the outside in. Every dream places you at a similar crossroads. The laughter of others is not merely a social inconvenience, it is a psychological test. It tempts you to abandon your vision in exchange for belonging. It whispers that safety lies in conformity, and if your identity is built entirely upon approval, you will likely surrender. But if your identity begins to anchor itself in purpose, something remarkable happens. You become less fragile. Criticism still stings, but it no longer dictates your direction. Doubt still visits, but it does not take permanent residence. The dream refines you precisely because it exposes your weaknesses. It reveals how much of your self-worth depends on affirmation. It forces you to confront insecurities that might otherwise remain hidden. In pursuing something meaningful, you encounter resistance not only from the world, but from within yourself. You meet your fear of failure. You confront your desire to be liked. You wrestle with the temptation to quit quietly and avoid embarrassment. This inner struggle is not evidence that you are unfit. It is evidence that you are growing. Identity is not static. It evolves through challenge. Each time you persist despite doubt, you reshape your internal structure. You shift from being a person who seeks permission to being a person who acts from conviction. This shift is subtle but profound. It marks the difference between living reactively and living intentionally. There is a certain loneliness in this process. When you choose purpose over approval, you may feel misunderstood. Relationships may shift. Conversations may grow strained. But within that solitude, you begin to encounter yourself more honestly. You discover strengths you did not know you possessed. You learn that you can endure discomfort without disintegrating. And gradually, your identity becomes less dependent on applause and more aligned with authenticity. This inner restructuring is far more valuable than public recognition. Applause is fleeting. It rises and falls with circumstances. But a self forged through perseverance endures. When you build your identity around purpose rather than praise, you gain a stability that external validation can never provide. The dream, then, is not merely about achievement. It is about integration. It compels you to unify your actions with your deepest convictions. It demands that you become stronger than doubt, not by eliminating doubt, but by refusing to let it define you. In choosing loyalty to your vision, you are choosing loyalty to your evolving self. And that choice, repeated over time, transforms not only what you accomplish, but who you become. In the early stages of any meaningful pursuit, the voices of doubt seem overwhelming. Mockery is loud, criticism is immediate, opinions arrive quickly, often confidently, as though the future has already been decided. When you step forward with a dream that has not yet materialized, you stand exposed. There is no evidence to shield you, no visible proof to silence the laughter, and so the noise can feel deafening. But noise is not truth. It is merely the sound of the present reacting to what it does not yet understand. Time, unlike opinion, does not rush. It does not argue. It does not defend. It simply reveals. In the beginning, mockery dominates because results are invisible. Yet as days turn into years, something subtle occurs. The dream either dissolves under pressure or solidifies through persistence. And when it solidifies, it begins to speak in a language no critic can refute evidence. History repeatedly demonstrates this pattern. Those who are later admired were often first dismissed. Thomas Edison's journey toward the electric light was not a straight ascent, but a long corridor of failed attempts. Thousands of experiments did not produce the desired result. To the casual observer, this looked like incompetence or obsession. Yet when asked about his repeated failures, Edison reframed them. He claimed he had discovered thousands of ways that did not work. His perspective reveals something essential about the psychology of endurance. He did not interpret delay as defeat. What changed public perception was not his defense of himself. It was not persuasive speech or emotional appeal. It was the simple illumination of a bulb that worked. When the light shone, arguments became irrelevant. Evidence replaced ridicule. This is the silent power of time. It tests not your enthusiasm, but your consistency. Many people begin with excitement. Few continue with discipline. The dreamer who endures learns to detach from the immediate need for validation. While others become distracted by trends, applause, or criticism, the committed individual continues quietly. There is a certain solitude in this quiet building. It lacks drama. It rarely attracts attention. Yet it is precisely here that foundations are laid. Psychologically, this requires a capacity that is increasingly rare: the ability to delay gratification. The famous Stanford marshmallow experiment revealed that children who could resist the temptation of an immediate reward in exchange for a greater future reward tended to experience more favorable life outcomes years later. They demonstrated self-regulation, patience, and trust in a future they could not yet see. Dreams demand the same discipline. They ask you to endure temporary humiliation for long-term fulfillment. They require you to tolerate the discomfort of being misunderstood today in order to manifest clarity tomorrow. This is not merely a practical challenge, it is an inner transformation. You must cultivate a relationship with time that is not anxious but faithful. Anxiety demands immediate proof. Faithfulness works without applause. When you understand that time is the ultimate witness, you stop attempting to win every argument. You cease trying to convince those who doubt you. Instead, you redirect your energy toward steady effort. You allow your work to mature. You accept that the present may not reflect the full reality of your potential. This patience does not imply passivity. It is active endurance. It is showing up repeatedly when enthusiasm has faded. It is refining your craft when no one is watching. It is maintaining commitment when the initial excitement has dissolved into routine. In these quiet repetitions, character is formed. Time has a way of separating fantasy from faithfulness. Fantasy is loud in imagination but weak in endurance. It collapses when confronted with obstacles. Faithfulness, however, persists. It adapts. It learns. It grows stronger through resistance. The difference is not always visible at first. Both may appear passionate in the beginning. But only one survives the long corridor of delay. There will be moments when you question whether the wait is worth it. You may look around and see others receiving quick recognition. You may feel the sting of comparison. In such moments, remember that time measures differently than society does. Society measures speed. Time measures depth. Depth cannot be rushed. If you remain consistent while others drift, if you continue building while critics lose interest, something inevitable begins to take shape. The invisible becomes visible. The quiet effort accumulates into undeniable substance, and when that moment arrives, it does not need dramatic defense. It stands on its own. Time does not shout. It reveals. And when it reveals, the laughter that once echoed so loudly fades into irrelevance. What remains is the steady testimony of work sustained, of vision honored, of patience rewarded. In the end, it is not the volume of the mockery that determines your fate, but the duration of your faithfulness. There is a quiet misconception that drives much of human striving: the belief that the ultimate reward is to be proven right. We imagine the moment of recognition as a kind of final vindication, a dramatic reversal where those who once doubted us are forced into silence. We picture applause washing away years of misunderstanding. Yet those who have truly walked the long road of devotion to a dream often discover something unexpected when success finally arrives. The victory feels different than imagined, softer, quieter, almost secondary. For the deepest triumph did not occur in the public arena. It occurred in the hidden chambers of the self. To pursue a dream in the face of doubt is to enter into a profound psychological process. At first, you may be motivated by the desire to prove something to yourself or to others. But as obstacles accumulate and time stretches on, the motive begins to evolve. The external goal remains, but something inward is being shaped simultaneously. You are being refined in ways that no applause can measure. Resilience is not born in comfort. It emerges through repeated encounters with uncertainty. Each time you faced ridicule and chose to continue, you strengthened an inner muscle. Each time you doubted yourself yet refused to abandon your path, you expanded your capacity to endure tension. This resilience becomes part of your character. It is not visible like a trophy, but it is far more enduring. Along the journey, you cultivate something even more essential: self-trust. In the beginning, you may have relied heavily on encouragement, but as external validation became scarce, you were forced to listen more closely to your own inner voice. You learned to distinguish between constructive criticism and fear-driven projection. You learned when to adjust and when to persist. This discernment cannot be taught through theory. It is earned through experience. Standing alone becomes less terrifying when you have survived solitude before. What once felt like isolation begins to feel like independence. You discover that your worth is not determined by immediate approval. You begin to act from alignment rather than from anxiety. Perhaps one of the most profound transformations occurs in your relationship with doubt. At first, doubt feels like an enemy, something to be eradicated. But over time, you realize that doubt, when acknowledged rather than denied, sharpens awareness. It forces you to examine your motives, refine your methods, and confront your weaknesses. Instead of being destroyed by doubt, you integrate it. It becomes a companion that keeps you humble and attentive. This integration is psychological maturity. It is the movement from fragility to wholeness. When public recognition finally arrives, if it does, many describe an almost surreal calm. The applause is real, yet it does not penetrate as deeply as they once imagined. The external validation feels fleeting compared to the years of quiet effort that preceded it. Why is this so? Because the true transformation has already taken place. By the time the world notices, you are no longer the person who desperately needed to be noticed. You have already confronted your fears. You have already endured misunderstanding. You have already proven to yourself that you can persist without guarantees. The outer victory is merely a visible reflection of an invisible process. It mirrors the growth that has already occurred within. If someone had offered you early applause without the struggle, you might have gained recognition but lost depth. Without resistance, there would have been no resilience. Without solitude, no self-trust. Without doubt, no integration. The very obstacles you once resented were shaping the foundation of your character. This is why being proven right is not the greatest reward. To be right satisfies the ego temporarily. To become integrated satisfies the soul more deeply. When you look back on your journey, the most meaningful moments may not be the public milestones, but the private decisions, the evenings when you chose to continue despite exhaustion, the mornings when you silenced self-criticism and returned to your work, the conversations where you held your vision even when it was misunderstood. In those moments, you were not merely chasing success. You were becoming someone capable of carrying it. And this is crucial. Success without inner growth can be destabilizing. Recognition without maturity can distort identity. But when the inner transformation precedes the outer achievement, success rests on solid ground. Ultimately, the world may or may not acknowledge your dream. Applause may come, or it may not. But if you have endured the process honestly, you will possess something far more stable than praise. You will possess a self that has been tested and tempered. You will know that you can trust your convictions. You will understand that you can withstand doubt without collapsing. The real triumph, then, is not the moment when others finally agree with you. It is the quiet realization that you no longer need them to. So if they laughed at your dream, let them. Let them misunderstand. Let them question. Let them underestimate. For every great movement, invention, and breakthrough was once dismissed as absurd. The laughter you hear today may be the same sound that once echoed around every visionary who dared to see beyond their time. The question is not whether others believe in you. The question is whether you can endure long enough for time to reveal what you already sense within yourself. Hold the vision quietly. Work steadily. Grow internally. And one day, without announcement, without revenge, without bitterness, time will speak, and when it does, it will not laugh.